Are you on? Yes. In this video, I will answer a couple Q&A questions that I received on my Instagram about being a mother and an artist. But first, I will tell my background story of becoming an artist and becoming a mother. Beware, this is a personal story and I need to be a bit courageous to tell this, but I know 5 years ago I would definitely want to see this video because I always wondered about how does life look like when you are a mother and an artist? How does that work and what does that do with your artistship? I'm not going to talk about making money as an artist. I feel like that's a whole different topic. I'm going to now approach artistship as ikigai. That's a Japanese word, which I hope that I'm not totally destroying when I speak it out. I recently watched a documentary about people living in the blue zones and what is needed to have longevity, so to have a long life. And ikigai is a very important part of it. So living from your life purpose, following your heart, your life goal. I come actually from a generation in where people thought that you didn't have to love your job, you just needed to shut up and work. And ikigai is definitely not about that. That's quite the opposite. So I'm talking about artistship in the sense of ikigai. All right, so I'm Christina, I'm 33 years old, and I'm an artist and also a mother. And I'm a Capricorn, just in case that you wondered. And right now my ikigai, I feel, is being an artist. So creating and bringing stuff to life. And I love to do this with ceramics currently. I feel like I have a bit of a cliche background story in terms of becoming an artist because it's that story, you know, I didn't really fit in, but I could draw. Well, that's kind of the story. Yeah, so in my own family, I didn't really fit in. And at school, I also really didn't fit in. And I always blamed myself for that, do note, you know. I didn't feel like a special snowflake. My God, it just didn't work somehow. And I always wondered, what am I doing wrong? However, when I was drawing, that was actually the moment in where I found connection with other people. So my mother and me really didn't get along. But when I started to draw, then there was this small moment of pocket in time in where we both understood each other. So she was actually the one that taught me that I could build up the world from shapes, so that everywhere where you look, you can see the shape. And that was the way in learning to draw for me. So for example, you know, a horse is like circle, circle, line, and then triangles, you know, and the neck. And we often did that, and that really, well, is still in me. And sometimes I wonder, is this the reason that I'm working with shapes currently? School wasn't like the best place to be for me. So I went from this very little school to middelbare school. I guess that's some bit of high school, I guess. And I landed in this huge class of 30 kids who apparently judged each other by looks and by being cool if you wore cool shoes. And I just didn't got that memo early on. So I needed to figure out how that worked. Sometimes people say that a soul chooses their family. And I sometimes wonder, is that true? Because what was my soul thinking? In high school, I started to become angry with reason, you know, because I was like, why? My God, can't I figure this shit out? But in drawing class, I was always welcome. And somehow drawing class was the only class for me in where I was being appreciated as a person. So I wasn't being judged on my anger or my shoes. I could just draw, and my teacher loved what I drew. So I think that was a bit of the red line for me, that I knew drawing is good. Rest bad, drawing good. Unfortunately, from my 14 to 18, I really started to have a really bad time at home and also at school. And so I was placed outside of my home into youth care. And there I really lost my drawing. I think I really forgot about it there. And it was just more survival. But around this time, I also met my boyfriend, who is currently my husband. And eventually, when I was 17, I moved in with him. And at that point, well, first we played World of Warcraft for like half a year because he also kind of had difficulty with humans because my husband has autism and ADHD. Back then, I didn't know what that meant. I was like, I don't care. And now I'm starting to understand what that means. And I sometimes also wonder if I have something of that. So, but I feel like for guys and women, it's a totally different diagnosis. So that's a separate topic. Then after playing World of Warcraft for half a year, I thought, can't I create this world? I love gaming. I love World of Warcraft. I love to be in this world. And I realized that I could enter a school. So we have, in the Netherlands, we have like MBO, HBO, and university. So MBO is like mid-level, higher level, and university. Higher level is art school, for example. But mid-level, you can just enter. And then I found out that at mid-level, there was actually game design. You could get a diploma in game design. And I was like, yes, I will become. No, the story is a bit different. I did multimedia, and I said to my boyfriend, I said, you are going to do game design, and then we'll go to school together. And he was like, I'm fine with this. No, that's not his voice. It's like, I'm fine with this. And then I saw his homework, and I was like, let me make this homework. I love this. And so I switched into game design. And it was there that I got reconnected with what I could do. I could create worlds, and I love drawing. I learned to draw in Photoshop, and I was like, so I spent really much of my time drawing, creating worlds into the tiniest details. The unfortunate thing about designing games is that you kind of need other people in order to create like a whole game, because it's really a lot of work and programming isn't my strength. So after completing or getting my diploma in game design, I decided to go to art school and study animation design, because animation design you can actually do by yourself. And I was like, I'm going to create a world. I remember that time. Makes me feel alive. I do have to say that mid-level school is okay, but the teachers aren't that often that good. I need to be honest about that. At least that was in my case the case. But on higher level, art school, the teachers are actually good. And there I landed in this year, and where by accident, maybe I had a range of very good teachers who actually could see through my layers. Because in order to survive, well, my life, I needed to, oh, the light's going away. The sad part. No, but the good part is coming. But I needed to have layers. So I was wearing heavy makeup, and I was always watching my clothes, because I learned that lesson, that I never wanted to be bullied again because of the clothes that I wore. And I thought that drawing nice was the way. You need to draw nice, because that always had been my way in order to get attention and connect with people. And over there, I actually got teachers who were like, okay, it's nice that you can draw nice, but what else can you do? And I was like, nah, I will draw nice. So for the first year, I just drew nice. But then slowly they, in a very good way, invited me to delve a bit deeper, you know? So with model drawing classes, but also with philosophy. I never knew what philosophy was. I always thought that it was bullshit, but the philosophy classes that I had over there made me realize that, hold on, the thoughts that I have in my mind, the questions that I have in my mind actually are questions that other people have as well. And they wrote books about it. So I became alive and very scared and very scared at the same time, because it's very scary if you feel those layers that you carefully build up peel off. So I gotta say that was also a scary time. It was my worst fear in that first year, that I would have this presentation at school and I would just break out and cry. That was like, a horrific scenario in my mind. And of course, in the years following up to that at art school, that happened, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So I felt safe there. That was very important. And maybe that's also a very, I think in my life, feeling safe wasn't something that came with my family, you know? So it wasn't that I started to feel safe up until I actually started to live with my boyfriend. And then at school, because I went to art school when I was 22, it wasn't up until then that I started to feel safe at school. So I was a bit late in feeling safe. So that took some layers. I know that not all art schools are like this, but the group of teachers that I had at that moment judged mainly on curiosity, actually. So if you prove to be a very curious person, and you could also show that to them, hey, I'm doing research and I'm curious about the world, and I'm translating that into drawings or other types of work or weird films. I made a lot of weird films. They really approved of that. So I was like, well, heck it. By coincidence, I am a very curious person, so let's go! And so for 4 or 5 years, it was just a really good time for me. And I bloomed. And I graduated cum laude. And it was fucking awesome. And then I graduated, and then I came back into the real world, and I realized that the real world still didn't really understand me, the main topic, unfortunately. I had forgotten about that at art school, but then in the real world, it was like, and that's, I made this beautiful graduation movie called Hersenspinsels about this spider who made images of people. So it was like, what if you have this spider living inside of your head? Because it's a Dutch word, hersenspinsels, that stands for figment. And I thought, what if your image of being a human is in your head? Of course it is, but there's this little spider who makes this web of the images that you have of humans. And then at a certain point in time, he is walking through all those images, and then he meets a child spider who is creating their first image of a human. And the spider sees that and thinks, what the heck is this? And that was what my movie was about. My God, and it still carries my heart, and it did so well in art school and during graduation. My favorite model drawing teacher even cried when he saw the film for the first time, and that's when I knew, yes, I feel seen and understood. But well, then the film came into the real world. My parents also saw it, and they were like, what's this? And I was like, just my soul. So then the layers that I shed a bit in art school needed to go back on a bit. But I think that's the story of many people who go to art school. They have this beautiful bubble and where they can bloom, and then they need to find their blooming place in the real world. And that's a whole story on itself. And around that time, I found ceramics, because I felt like ceramics are more universally understood. So a coffee cup is a coffee cup, even if it's a bit weird and it has like my hands all over it. So that became my way of connecting with people. And I also started to give a lot of workshops in it. And the workshops were actually doing really nice. So in a couple of years' time, I did sell my ceramics worldwide. So that was really nice. And I also had at least, I think, 600 people in my workshops. And that was actually my way of connecting. I feel like playing together is such a primal thing, and you're just quiet or you talk a little bit and we're all pinching and not being overstimulated. It worked so well for me. And then I became a mother. I think my husband and me were in a 13-year relationship when his mother got breast cancer. And then he really wanted to cheer her up. And his mother and also my family are very, very deeply Christian. And they were always quite bothered by us not being married. But we were always thinking, well, why should we? And then we were sitting at his mother's bed after her surgery. And my husband looked at me and said, Christina, shall we tell her the news? And I just instantly knew what he meant, even though he never asked me to marry me. And I was like, oh, sure. And he said to his mother, Mom, Christina and me are getting married. He just really wanted to cheer her up. And then afterwards we sat in the car and I said to him, okay, I'm fine with getting married, but you do need to ask me, to get married. I mean, like, what the heck? And we kind of forgot about it. I forgot about it. And then half a year later, we were in Belgium and we were walking through this field, and all of a sudden he goes on one knee and I'm like, what the hell? Then he grabbed out, you know, the pocket where the ring is in. And my first thought was, oh no, I hope it's not an ugly ring. Because I knew I needed to wear it, you know, my whole life. I'm not wearing it right now. I have put it on a cabinet really high. I don't know why. I think because I was going to do a workout and I can't find it, but it's somewhere. It's not ugly. It was very beautiful. Anyway, we got married, and I realized that I was, I think, 29. I realized, I guess now is the time to do the kids thing, you know? I feel like I'm in a stable relationship. We have a home. I will never in my life want to give birth, but I guess that we're going to do it. So I'm not going to wait anymore before like the hammer hits and I wonder about when will I give birth. So I was like, okay, let's just do it. Let's become parents. I didn't know much about kids, actually. I knew how to draw with them, and I had this image in my mind of my son sitting at my dinner table and being like, Mother, this dinner is delicious. I know, I was a bit naive. I was naive. I think in the back of my mind, I also, and that's not good to think, but it's like it's such a base primal thought, but I thought, hey, I'm married now, and if we get a kid, I'm finally doing that thing which my family might approve of, and maybe I will fit in. Which was silly, because of course it didn't work that way. But I think that was also something in the back of my mind. And of course I was curious about what will my child look like, you know? And so after 6 months, I became pregnant. And I actually had a very good pregnancy. Of course, I was noxious as heck, you know, and constantly worried. Then I gave birth. I always wondered about people that are highly sensitive, how they gave birth, how would they do it? I mean, like that experience is then also like extra sensitive, right? And I also thought I will do a home birth, because that's like what we humans do, right? Like as primal humans. And so I had a very panic-driven birth. I think my body was like, let's do it quick. Let's get this out quick. And the whole time I was almost frozen. I was laying frozen because I felt like if I move a muscle, then it hurts even more. It was the pain. Whew. And my husband also really didn't know how to deal with it. That was like he got one of his biggest errors in his whole life. Because when you become a mother for the first time, people say like, this is how giving birth works. You know, you have like 1 centimeter every hour, and it's best for the husband to sleep through the first centimeters, because after that he will need to get up and running. So my husband was the whole time like, no, but wait, I need to still sleep because they told me to sleep. And the you have this person visiting you, the obstetrician, I'm not sure how they call it, and she was constantly like, this will last a day or something like that. And I was like, I am dying here. This will last a day. I'm not capable physically of dying a day like this. But apparently the birth was just going really fast. And then I met my son. And I wasn't really ready for that. Nobody told me about the moment that you meet your son and you meet the most innocent creature in the whole world. And I just didn't know that such innocence existed. So I was smacked in my face. Such innocence, such a bright light, my God. I also cried for the Christina of 3 years ago who gave birth, because I just didn't know what was happening. I just didn't know. I had no idea that innocence existed. Such a bright light, you know, so pure. And so I landed into a pretty awful postnatal depression, because I think my mind just couldn't process that. Your nervous system isn't really good in like too big of a change. And that was the biggest change in my life, and like a snap. you know. So that was a very difficult time, let's just say that. And it was also I think a time that I needed in my life, because I had so many layers, you know, in order to survive. But when your son is born, all those layers kind of shatter and you are both pure. So it's not only your baby that's pure, but for that little pocket in time, you are also very pure. And you're together, you know. But then after 3 days, he didn't do so well. So we need to go to the hospital. And that's where I really, really crashed. Because that's something that I wouldn't wish upon anyone in the whole fucking world. That you first of all meet your baby, who is like this universe, but also so vulnerable, and then he's not doing well. I mean, like, I think we are, as humans, we try to be comfortable, and we are doing pretty good at being comfortable, but giving birth is so raw. Meeting your child is so raw, and sometimes it just, well, doesn't really go the way you think it will go, and whew, intense. So then I couldn't sleep anymore. I think I didn't sleep really for 12 days. I just didn't want to. My mind just didn't want to switch off. So it was like difficult times. But thankfully, I was already following therapy, so I knew how to use the lines and call people and say, "Fuck, I need help." And so I got helped. Thankfully I didn't get meds. Only I got one sleeping pill, one epic sleeping pill, and that one kind of resetted my sleep. And then I tried to do it without antidepressants or anything like that. But it was a tough road. Let me tell you that it was a tough road. But now it's thankfully 3 years later. I'm feeling more myself again. But that schmack, I will never. Well, you become a different person. Let's just say that, you know, you just become a different person. Also, what made that first year very difficult is that I saw how my parents were reacting to the emotions of my son. And that's when I really started to realize, hold up, I always blamed myself for not fitting in, but how I saw that they were responding to his emotions and constantly misreading him. And now I think my parents have some form of autism, which would make a lot of sense. But that was very difficult. I feel like postnatal depression doesn't just happen. It happens when you have that huge change in your life, and where you all of a sudden realize that the people that were close to you aren't the people that you thought they were. And so I started to read a lot of books about emotional maturity. How does that work? How does trauma work? And then I really started to realize, oh, wait. Slowly I started to understand what was happening. And it was also the first time in my life where I felt a togetherness. That was really the first time in my life that I really felt it. So with my husband and my son, I started to feel together. And at some points it was really pure. And at some points I felt love, and I was deathly scared of feeling love. And then I just kind of zoned out, you know, and then I tried to pull myself back in again. So that was a lot of hard work in order to deal with that and also grow from that. And in hindsight, I feel like I really needed to learn to human again from like point one, just as my son did. So weirdly, together we developed and also rediscovered the world. And that became a really big topic also in my artworks, because I also was rediscovering over there. What I did do was go back to work pretty early and start giving workshops again, because I felt like this at least I know how to do. The whole human and mother business is like, I'm working my ass off over here, you know, but this at least I know how to do. And so of course I overworked myself pretty early on. So I think after 1.5 or 2 years, I really realized that the workshops were probably needed to go, unfortunately. But also what I started to notice was that I still didn't have all my walls on again. So I was actually able to create way more honest artworks. This is a nice bridge. I feel like now I have concluded the story very nicely. Nice. But it's true. I finally felt like I could connect. And I think that's the thing, right? If you have many walls on and you live a very anxious life, it's very hard to connect with this baseline in life, this base primal flow that flows through us all, I believe. But when you have a kid, it's easier. And that also connects, well, at least in my case, to creativity. And what really helped me was try to translate those experiences into a cup with, or like a little house, you know. I could puzzle with it and create like cups with shapes. I mean, like, let me show you, you know, creating a simple cup with a square and a triangle, you know, also approaching life in a more simple and slow way. I feel like if you're creative, you can make that an extension of who you are and what your desires are. Because the nice thing about art is that you can create something and by doing so place it outside of you. Because some things in life simply do not have words. Some things in life are a feeling or are visual and are open to be expressed in a different way, through music, through writing, but also through creating images. And I feel like that's the difference, and that is what makes art art. So it's not per se the pretty picture that you create, it's the feeling that you want out, the feeling that wants to flow through you and somehow wants to come out of you. Becoming a mother actually was a very important part of that puzzle in being able to be this authentic creator. I'm not saying that you need to become a mother to become an authentic creator. I'm saying this worked for me. But I would have never known 5 years ago, because there I also was an artist. But now I understand and I see and I feel this way deeper layer of life. So that's a bit of the story of me as an artist. Where am I in this whole, what I wrote down? I had this talk with a friend of mine who also became a mother around the same time as me, and also starting to wonder about maybe having autism. That's really a thing. That also brings out, you know, that brings it out in you if you have it. And she was, I think, comparing herself to me because I have an atelier, and she said, I do not feel like I'm an artist. But I actually do know or knew that she was creating this story tree from clay to put inside of her home to tell her child stories. And I said, you are being an artist. Actually, you are creating, you are tuning into that inner flow of yours. But you think that being an artist is this thing in where you need to create art, you know, the stigma. But actually creating something from a desire, even if it's just a stolen moment where you want to hand knit a flower, that's also tuning into your creative being. And I feel like if you do that and are actually honest to that and grab those little pockets of time in where it's possible. I mean, for example, I have now 2 hours, I think. My husband actually got sick after our holidays. I know that my son will sleep for 2 hours. So I have now this pocket of 2 hours. I could have cleaned my atelier, you know, that would have been a very adult thing of me to do. But I've decided to get this story out because I want to tell it. And I feel like that's what being an artist is. Tuning in to the thing that wants out, your ikigai. And it's currently not my ikigai to clean this heck of a mess. All right. I hope that this story makes sense. I also hope that when I'm going to edit it, that I won't be too critical, because I just feel like this is a good story to have out there, you know. And now let's go to the Q&A. I thought let's end on a bit of a lighter note, you know, because the Q&A questions aren't that deep and just are mostly fun, I think. I'm going to search them. So on Instagram, I asked people if they have questions about being an artist and a mother. I do have to say, I do not think that I'm like the best possible example out there, but I am an artist and a mother. So, and I try. Let's answer a couple of these questions. Do you have more or less creative energy? I think when you become a mother, you have like, if this is your range of experience and feelings, you know, so this is like feeling bad and this is like feeling really good. When you become a mother, it becomes even more wider. So you have the capability of feeling even better and even worse. So in terms of creative energy, I also feel even more inspired at times. But I do gotta say, of course, I have less time to be creative. So that's the paradoxical thing of it. Or that's the price you pay, I guess. Have you come to rely on coffee? No, I actually became more sensitive to coffee. So 2 coffees a day is it for me. Did the reason you create change? Well, I think I finally understand the reason that I create more for connection, and also because some things just want out and I know how to express myself in art. That's a whole topic on itself that I could talk about in another video actually. Mental note that I might forget because mom brain. How did the theme of your work change? Well, that's the layer thing that I was talking about. So I feel like if you dare to be more vulnerable, you are also able to create more vulnerable art. And more vulnerable art, personally, for me, is more interesting to look at. So I feel like Playtown, for me, is like, the shapes and the houses. That's like, oh, I live there, And I definitely wouldn't have created Playtown if I wouldn't have become a mother. Ooh, do you have dreams about your son's artistic skills? Well, I do not wish for him to be able that he's an artist because he searches for connection with humans, because that's a bit of a difficult road. I do not have per se dreams for him. I just hope that I can guide him in being a reasonably happy human who feels good in his body. And I do feel like being creative helps with feeling good in your body. But he's also a very physical creature and he likes to move, so he has a very different way of creating than I do, because I'm more like in the fingertips touching. He's also, by the way, when I try to calm down, I have this piece of fabric from a bunny between my fingers and I tune out, and he does the same with his monkey. He recently created a house, that's on the last video, and today I showed it to him, but instead of like admiring it, he wanted to pull it apart. So you tell me how that works. It's a different way. It's a different way of creating. I have the idea that you are now choosing for yourself more, and that you are that you're seeing the core of your art more. Is that true? Yes, that's very true. How do you motivate yourself to create when being a mom or life in general has taken up all your space? So I know that there's this type of person. I have had multiple ateliers in like buildings that had multiple ateliers. And there was this type of person who thought that if they would get an atelier, then all of a sudden that they could become an artist or create. And I feel like that's the perfect example of how, in my opinion, it doesn't work. So if you feel like there are conditions in order to create, so you need to have like a clean space and everything needs to be totally quiet and everything needs to be on its spot before you can create, I'm not sure if it's going to happen. I feel like if you want to create, you need to create. You have like small pockets of time. You actually, as a mother, do not know per se when in a day you will get that pocket of time. So when you have it, grab it and don't do the dishes. Be gone, dishes, just go and create. I do have to say, if you feel like being an artist is making money with your art, then you are stepping away a bit from that heart feeling and you're going more towards the material things, and that's more rational. So if you have ideas about how to make art or how to be an artist, I feel like you're going more to the design part of art. And I think to create from the core, that's something else. You have like this Shia LaBeouf meme, right? Like the just do it. Oh, that's a shame. My battery died. I had such a good motivational talk and I had no idea that it wasn't recording anymore. That's a shame! I don't think I can get back to feeling what I felt in order to tell what I wanted to tell over there. But I do have to say one last thing is life is happening now. If you want to, you can create now. Life is a journey and you do not know what the next day will bring. But if you are waiting for the right time or the right motivation or the right inspiration, I don't know, what are you waiting for, man? I mean, just go and make things and it will never become exactly what you thought it would be. And that's the whole thing of it. That's the whole adventure of it. You are a maker, you are a creator, and that changes and that's fine. Sometimes I just create an excellent cup of coffee in a day. And that's fine as well. And sometimes I create something really, really awesome and my home is a mess. And that's also being a mother and being an artist. I'm not sure if that sounds good. I'll end this note on a couple books that I like. Well, so this one I'm still reading. There's a podcast out there that I'll link here that I find interesting. Sometimes also a bit intense and depressing, I gotta say. But stories about being an artist and a mother aren't that much available. So I think it's interesting to read. I do gotta say the intro is pretty infuriating because that's that thing, right? In where back in the day, women were just not respected as artists. It was always the guys somehow being respected as artists, even though I feel like women have such deep connection with the world, with the earth. You know, we create and birth childs, and we have always that hormonal waves, which is actually very interesting in regards to sensitivity and applying that to, I don't know, the canvas. But well, that's me. Talking about mothers and artists, I found Life with Picasso a very interesting read. It was, or it is, written by Françoise Gillot. This one gives a really good insight in the life of the woman living next to Picasso, who also was a very good artist. So this is like a very good book for that. From time to time, I randomly open The Creative Act Way of Being. And sometimes I just read something and I'm like, oh, it hits the spot. I recently read this part. Oh, here, look for what you notice, but no one else sees. You know, I know how that sounds, but it's true. I mean, you have a unique capability inside of you, and you have your own unique way of looking at the world. And personally, that's what's interesting for me. Also, I recently read this part about that this book said, you need to accept that most people will not understand what you're doing, and they give unsolicited advice, you know? People do that. And often those are the people that aren't in connection with like the deeper part of life, but they do give advice. And often it's pretty heartbreaking what people can say, but that's just the part of the package deal, I guess. And you need to have some thicker skin. Oh, also The Artist Way. This is also a good one to read, written by Julia Cameron. I feel like she tells the story really well. You also have the book of Elizabeth Gilbert. Those are women. Julia and Elizabeth are both women that just understand the flow. I feel like maybe I even have that concept of the flow from Elizabeth Gilbert. That could be, actually. Yeah. All right. Thank you for watching. Always feel free to say hi on the Instagram or on here. And see you next time.